The question everyone is asking. Hi, I'm Kathy Sokolic, Principal Realtor with the Mueller Residential Group here in Austin. And today I want to talk about something a lot of people are wrestling with right now. A question I genuinely hear every single week from buyers, from renters, from people who've been sitting on the fence for a while. Should I buy a home right now, or does it make more sense just to keep renting? And honestly, that is a great question. Not because it's complicated to answer, but because it genuinely depends on your individual situation. But here's what I've noticed. Most people who are asking that question aren't getting a complete answer. They're getting opinions, hot takes, and honestly, it's a lot of noise. So today, I want to give you an honest, side-by-side breakdown. No cheerleading for homeownership, no scare tactics about renting. Just a real look at what each path gives you and what each one costs you so you can make the right decision for where you actually are in life. This video is for anyone who's been comparing rent versus buy and wants a straight answer about the real trade-offs, financially and practically. So let's talk about renting, the honest version. I want to start by saying something that might surprise you coming from a realtor. Renting has real advantages, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Lower upfront costs, less maintenance stress, the ability to move with relatively short notice. Depending on where you are in life, career, family, roots, those things matter. They're legitimate. And if you just relocated to Austin and you're still figuring out which neighborhood feels right for you, renting while you learn the city is genuinely smart. If you're in a job that could move you in the next 18 months, renting buys you flexibility you'd lose if you were tied to a mortgage. If your financial picture isn't quite ready, renting while you build savings and build up your credit is a completely reasonable strategy. So I want to be clear. Renting is not a failure, it's a tool, and sometimes it is absolutely the right tool. Renting makes sense when you're new to an area, your job or income is in flux, or you're actively building toward a stronger financial position. But here's where the conversation gets important. Because there is something renting doesn't give you, and most people don't fully feel it until years down the road. Renting does not build equity, full stop. Every month, you're paying for a place to live, and that's real value. Don't get me wrong, but you're not building ownership. You're not gaining a financial stake in anything. You're not accumulating an asset. A Bank of America survey found that 70% of aspiring homeowners are genuinely worried about what long-term renting means for their financial future. And that concern, I think it's really well-founded. Not because renting is wrong, again, but because time is the one thing you can't get back. So how does home ownership build wealth over time? Let's talk about what owning a home actually does for you financially. And I want to frame this the right way because I hear a lot of misconceptions. Home ownership is absolutely not a get-rich-quick move. It's not a guaranteed windfall. It's not some magical shortcut. What it is a slow, steady, remarkably consistent way to build wealth over time. And the mechanism behind it is simple. It's called equity. Every mortgage payment you make has two parts. There's the interest, what the lender earns, and there's the principal, the part that chips away at what you owe and increases what you own. Now, in the early years of a mortgage, most of your payment actually goes toward your interest. That's just how amortization works. But over time, that balance shifts. And as home values continue to rise, which historically they do, your equity grows even faster. It compounds. And that compounding is the quiet engine behind one of the most significant wealth gaps in America. Here's the number that I think says everything. According to the National Association of Realtors, the average homeowner's net worth is 43 times greater than the average renter's. Average homeowner net worth, $430,000 on average. A renter net worth, $10,000. Now, I want to be really careful about how I present that number because it could come across as a scare tactic. It is not. That's not my intent. Those homeowners are not smarter than renters. They're not making wildly better financial decisions every day. Everybody's different. The difference in most cases comes down to one thing. Over time, their monthly housing payments were building something, and the renters' payments were building their landlord's wealth instead. That's okay. One way I like to think about it, a home is essentially a savings account you get to live in. Every month, a portion of your payment goes into that account. And unlike a traditional savings account, that asset is also likely to appreciate over time. A home is like a savings account that you live in. Every mortgage payment builds equity, and appreciation compounds that growth over time. The gap is getting wider. What makes this even more striking is the trend. The net worth gap between homeowners and renters hasn't been narrowing over the past decade. It's been growing. Each year, homeowners accumulate more, and renters, by and large, stay in roughly the same financial position. Even in 2025, a year when home price growth moderated in many markets, including here in Austin, homeowners still pulled further ahead because even modest appreciation on top of equity already built continues to compound. Now, I want to be honest about the Austin market specifically. We had a period of very rapid appreciation coming out of the pandemic. That cooled and prices moderated. Interest rates rose, which affected buying power for a lot of people. But here's what I keep telling my clients. Rates are a short-term consideration. The equity you build over 10, 15, or 20 years, that's the actual story. And the people who bought in Austin 5 or 10 years ago, even if they didn't time the market perfectly, could be sitting on significant equity today because they were in the market. And compounding had time to work. The longer you own it, the more you have. Okay, so we've established that homeownership builds wealth over time in a way that renting doesn't. Does that mean everyone should buy a home right now? No. And I'm not going to tell you that. Here's my honest take. Buying a home is the right move when it is the right move for you. Not because I say so, not because the market says so. It's really your personal situation that supports it. So what does that actually look like? There are 4 questions I walk every buyer through. Number 1, can your budget support a mortgage without financial strain? Number 2, do you plan to stay in the home long enough to build meaningful equity? That's usually 5+ years. Have you spoken with a lender and understand what you actually qualify for? Number 4, are you emotionally and practically ready for the responsibilities of home ownership? Let's walk through each of those because I think they're all worth sitting with. First, the budget. And I don't mean, can you technically afford the mortgage payment? I mean, if you take on this payment, plus property taxes, plus homeowners insurance, plus maintenance. Does your monthly cash flow still feel comfortable? Or does it feel stretched? There's a difference between buying at the top of what you qualify for and buying the right number for your life. We call it being house poor. These are not always the same thing. Second, timeline. The math on home ownership works best when you are planning to stay put for 5+ years, ideally longer. Why is this? Because when you first buy, you have closing costs to recoup. Your early mortgage payments are mostly interest. It takes time for equity to accumulate to the point where selling makes financial sense. It's expensive to buy and sell homes. So if you think you might relocate in 18 months, buying might not be the right move. And that's okay to acknowledge. Third, your pre-approval. I made a whole separate video on this. It's the single most important step before you start house hunting. And a lot of buyers skip it. Until you've talked to a lender, your budget is just a guess. Pre-approval gives you a real legitimate number, real confidence, and real leverage in the market. You can't make an offer without a pre-approval letter. Fourth, readiness. Owning a home is different from renting one. When something breaks, it's yours to fix. That's not a reason not to buy, but it is a real part of the picture that deserves honest consideration. If those 4 boxes are checked or close to being checked, the case for buying is strong. If they're not, then renting while you prepare is a completely sound strategy. The key word is while you prepare, not instead of planning. Renting while you prepare is smart. Renting indefinitely without a plan is a very different thing. What's the real cost of waiting? Here's the part of this conversation that I don't think gets enough attention. When people decide to wait, to keep renting a little longer, to see what the market does, there's an assumption baked into that decision. The assumption is that waiting is free, that it's neutral, that nothing is being lost. But again, remember that thing called time? Waiting has a cost, and it's real. I love asking people this question: whose mortgage are you paying? Because here's the thing, every month, you are paying for someone else's mortgage when you rent. When you rent, it's your landlord's. When you own, it's yours. And every payment into yours builds equity. Every payment into theirs builds their equity. Now, again, I want to be careful here because I'm not saying this to make anyone feel like renting was not the right decision. That is not the point. The point is simply the cost of waiting isn't zero. Time in the market has historically mattered more than timing the market. Nobody has a crystal ball. Every year you delay is a year of equity you didn't build, a year of price appreciation you didn't capture, a year of tax benefits you didn't access. And look, I also hear the flip side of this argument. Rates are a little high right now. What if prices drop? What if I buy and then rates come down and prices shoot up and I'm stuck? These are fair concerns. And here's how I think about them. First, rates can change. And when they come down meaningfully, you can refinance. It's always an option. Also, price predictions are just that, predictions. Nobody knows with certainty what Austin home prices will do in the next 3 to 5 years. But over a 10 to 15 year horizon, the historical trend in Austin has been appreciation. That never guarantees the future, but it does provide meaningful context. The bottom line is this: waiting for the perfect moment often means waiting indefinitely. And the buyers I've seen succeed over the long term are not the ones who timed the market perfectly. They're the ones who bought a home they could afford in a neighborhood they wanted to live in and stayed long enough for equity to do its job. A mortgage is a long-term commitment. The rate you start with is not necessarily the rate you're stuck with forever. What this looks like in Austin specifically, I want to bring this back locally to Austin specifically, because this is where we live and where I work every day. Austin is a very nuanced market right now. We're not in the frenzy of 2021 and 2022. Inventory is a little bit higher. Prices have moderated in most areas. Days on market have increased. For buyers, that actually means more breathing room than we've had in years. You have more time to look, most of the time. You have more negotiating power, most of the time. You can ask for concessions, things like closing cost assistance, rate buy downs, repairs that buyers couldn't even dream about 2 years ago. In some segments, sellers are willing to work with you. That's a real shift. There's always caveats. At the same time, the neighborhoods that buyers consistently want, Mueller, Central Austin, East Austin, those still move. Good homes in desirable areas at fair prices do not sit forever. The window is still wider than it was, but it is not unlimited. So if you've been watching the Austin market and are wondering whether now is the right time, my honest answer is, for buyers who are financially ready, this is a window worth taking seriously. Not because prices are at their lowest, but because you have a level of leverage right now that hasn't existed in the market for several years. So the bottom line in your next step, let's pull all of this together. Renting is not a mistake. It's the right choice in a lot of specific circumstances. When you're not ready financially, when your timeline is short, when you're still kind of finding your footing in a city. But renting is not a long-term wealth building strategy. And the longer you stay in a rental without a plan, the wider the financial gap between you and homeowners becomes. Home ownership is not right for everyone right now. But for the people who are ready, financially, logistically, emotionally, it is one of the most reliable ways to build real wealth over time. Not because I say so, only because the data says so, consistently over decades. The question isn't really rent versus buy. The question is, where are you in your journey and what's your plan? If you're not sure, if you're in the middle space where you're genuinely asking yourself these questions, that's exactly why I'm here and what I'm here to help you with. Not to sell you on anything, but to help you run real numbers, understand your actual options, and make a decision that fits your life. A conversation costs you nothing, and it might give you more clarity than weeks of reading articles and watching market predictions. So if that sounds useful, reach out. I genuinely love to talk through it with you. You can reach me at 512-809-3497 or at my email. Thanks so much. Happy to talk soon.